Appears to be a few political storms brewing in Washington right now.
Yeah, here to talk about it is Occidental College Professor Heldman. Thanks so much for joining us again this morning.
Good morning.
So this was certainly a busy week, even by the Trump administration standards, but Chief of Staff John Kelly is at the center of so many of this week's events. Do you think Kelly's on rocky ground here?
Well, I think that any time that you are the news and Donald Trump is not the news, you need to be worried about your position in the administration. Kelly continues to say one thing about how he handled the Rob Porter situation when we know that he's not entirely telling the truth. So, for example, he continues to say, look, I fired Rob Porter within 40 minutes, but we know actually that he had information back in November. So that is keeping his name in the press, this going back and forth, acknowledging he made a mistake and then saying, well, I didn't really make a mistake. Trump has got to be at his wits' end about that. We know, again, that he really doesn't like it when you're the news and when that news is negative.
And what about the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner? He had a security clearance downgraded this week. What's his future going to look like?
Well, I think his days are numbered, mostly because he can't do his job. He was a liaison to Mexico and a number of other countries and working in international affairs, but now he doesn't have top security clearance, which means he can't see the daily briefings, he can't do his job. And in addition to that, news has come out that he secured 2 loans after meeting with officials in the White House associated with the companies that offered those loans. He also is running into some issues with the Russia investigation. So again, his name being in the news, it being a negative story. We hear scuttlebutt from the White House that Donald Trump is trying to get John Kelly, oddly enough, to perhaps ask Ivanka and Jared to leave the White House. Because we also know that he doesn't like firing. He doesn't like that sort of one-on-one conflict.
Yeah, but Communications Director Hope Hicks says that she's going to step down really just after months on the job.
Just months on the job. She's the 5th person to hold this job. She's actually one of the last people in his inner circle, right? He came in with Reince Priebus, with Steve Bannon, with his son-in-law and his daughter, and Hope Hicks, who was, for all intents and purposes, his gatekeeper, but also his emotional support. But after she told the white lies, or admitted to telling white lies, she again became the negative press story. So you see this pattern with Kelly, with Jared, and of course with Hope Hicks, who's no longer with the White House.
How much turnover can this administration handle? How much can they withstand, do you think, Professor?
Well, and that's a great question. We do know that they've had higher turnover than any other administration since in modern time. About 30% of the staff is turned over, but in his inner circle, the number is even higher. About half have left. My concern is less about the number, and more about who is leaving. He brought a lot of folks in who were not particularly experienced or perhaps up for the jobs that they were holding. So maybe what this means is that he'll bring in people who have more political experience. And as we know, the Trump administration is teaching every school child in America how much experience matters when it comes to government.
What about gun control? The debate doesn't really seem to be going anywhere, but how far do you think the White House is willing to go?
Well, Trump flip-flopped as we anticipated that he might, right? So he initially had a meeting with Democratic and Republican lawmakers. He admonished his own party. He said, I want to pass common sense, or what folks are calling common sense, gun control, right? National registry, a ban on bump stocks, raising the age to 21. All of these things that Democrats have been fighting for so long. He sounded downright Democratic. But he met with the NRA late Thursday night, and it appears that he is, at least according to the NRA, he's reversing his position. So the largest lobby for the gun control is reporting that Donald Trump is shifting his position, which is pure politics, right? At the end of the day, this is kind of, again, what we anticipated, given his record on immigration, given his flip-flopping on other major issues, things that he's promised.
It'll be hard to see if anything gets done in regard to gun control if he's flipping back now.
Indeed, but there's pressure from children like we have never seen.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Professor. We appreciate your time and insight as always.
Thank you.